I'm going to just mention a little bit of history, not too much, but I think these are the facts that we have to constantly represent to people, because they do redress the balance and let people know what Zionism is. Zionism from its inception has been a colonial idea, an idea of exploitation and oppression, a tool in the hands of the wealthy and powerful for suppression of the Arab masses. It's not my appraisal. In fact, those are pretty much the words of its founding father, Theodor Herzl, who famously said, and I'll read to you, "For Europe, we shall create there in the Middle East an outpost against Asia. We shall be the vanguard of the civilized world against barbarism. England, with her possessions in Asia, should be most interested in Zionism. The shortest route to India is by way of Palestine, and so I believe in England that the idea of Zionism, which is a colonial idea, should be easily understood." I mean, it's clear, and he went successively to the powers asking essentially for sponsorship of this idea. And it was on this basis that he won support finally from the chief imperialist power of the time, namely England. So with the Balfour Declaration, England did indeed sponsor the creation of this colonial standing army in the Middle East. And in the process, really something that I still mourn, and I think the Jewish people should mourn to this day, they managed to turn a most militant and revolutionary Jewish population into its reverse, into a stalwart of reaction and a key hangman of the revolutionary national Arab movement. So the Balfour Declaration, Balfour quite simply said, "The four great powers are committed to Zionism, and Zionism, be it right or wrong, good or bad, is rooted in age-old traditions and present needs, in future hopes of far profounder import than the desires and prejudices of 700,000 Arabs who now inhabit that ancient land. Whatever deference should be paid to the views of those living here, the powers, in their selection of a mandatory, do not propose, as I understand the matter, to consult them." So much then for democracy. Imperialism cares not a jot for democracy. Imperialism in Palestine and the Middle East, as elsewhere, strives for domination. Domination of resources, domination of manpower, domination of markets. And that is quite simply the beginning and the end of the matter as far as British are concerned. Of course, since the Suez Crisis, the US has taken over the leading role and continues to play the leading role in supporting and sustaining the Zionist state. But the UK still plays a significant role. The Israeli state was founded upon a Holocaust, al-Nakbah as the Palestinians call it, the catastrophe of 1948, committed against the Palestinian people. But they used their badge of victimhood still to deflect criticism. The Jewish people have indeed been the victim of European history, but not the Jewish people alone. Along with them, 30 million Soviet citizens, 10 million German workers, etc., etc., etc. During the world wars, fully 100 million workers suffered as a result of various forms of imperialism: German Nazi imperialism, British established imperialism, French established imperialism, fighting with each other over the loot and spoil of a colonial empire. But it has been the great three-card trick of Zionism, as I've mentioned before. They're fraud perpetrated as much against the Jewish and Palestinian as against the Palestinian people and all other progressive people, to use this past crime against them to justify their new crimes, which they now are committing against the Arab people. Those interested, I think, read an excellent book by Norman Finkelstein called The Holocaust Industry, in which he discusses a lot of the details surrounding. Last time I spoke on Palestine, it was to commemorate the sad passing of Comrade George Habash, who was the founder of the PFLP, as well as the father of, if you like, Arab nationalist movement. He described the Nakbah of 1948 in very graphic and moving terms, and it occurred to me when I was rereading it how similar his picture of disaster has been to the picture we witness now when we look at the spectacle of the Palestinian people and their suffering, and really much of the history that's come in the intervening period. So if you'll indulge me again, I'm just going to read his relatively brief account. He said, Al-Lid, where he was, like other Palestinian Arab cities and villages, was in a severe condition of confusion and worry. Zionist airplanes were bombarding Palestinians and frightening them. Conditions were severe and horrible. I was involved in my work. He was working in the hospital. He was a doctor. When my mother's aunt came to the hospital and told me that my mother was worrying about me and asked me to return home, I refused and insisted on remaining in the hospital, but she insisted, and I in turn insisted on doing my duty. When I continued refusing, she then told me that my eldest sister, whom I loved dearly, had passed away. On my way home, I saw people in the streets in a severe condition of fright, and the injured, including some that I knew, lying unattended on the sidewalk. We buried my sister near our house, as reaching the graveyard was impossible. 3 hours after this, the Zionist terrorists attacked our house, shouting and ordering us to leave in Arabic, Yalla bara ukrojo. Forgive my pronunciation. Go out, leave. My mother and I, along with my sister's children, including a baby whom we carried, walked out with our relatives and neighbours. We didn't know where to go. The terrorists were ordering us to walk, and we walked. It was a very hot day, and it was Ramadan. Some of those around us were saying, it's the resurrection day. Others said, this is hell. Upon reaching the end of the town, we saw the Zionist checkpoint to search the people. We didn't have any arms or weapons, and it seemed that our neighbour's son, Amin Hanna, was hiding money, fearing that they would steal it from him. He refused to be searched. The terrorists, the Zionists, shot him dead just in front of us. His mother and his younger sister rushed to him and started wailing. His younger brother, Bishara, was a friend and classmate of mine, and we used to study together. You ask me, he says, why I chose this path. Why did I become an Arab nationalist? This Zionism claims to speak about peace. Said, this is the Zionism I know, saw, and experienced. And I think we can see clearly that this is the Zionism that the Arab people, as well as the neighboring states in the area, are still witnessing and are still experiencing. By 1967, he said, he had understood the ultimate truth that to liberate Palestine, we had to follow the Chinese and Vietnamese examples for his terrorists. The Ben Gurions and Ariel Sharons of the Stern Gang and the Irgun, who led this original massacre and were subsequently reorganized into the IDF, incidentally, they still run the country, and their successors run the country. Their policy of ethnic cleansing remains in force to the present, with scarcely a murmur of criticism from the international community. Which leads me to another observation that is often shunned and poo-pooed by many people, which is really that Israel is an apartheid state. In South Africa, in my youth, there was a strong anti-apartheid movement. I was in the Indian Workers Association. We in the Indian Workers Association and many others outside that association used to fight against the apartheid of South Africa. It was a system, we saw in that system, of Bantustans, of systematic discrimination, of torture, and of marginalization, and we fought it until it was torn down. And I think just precisely for those reasons we should continue to oppose the Zionist project in Israel, which is no less racist than the South African apartheid state, which, like the apartheid regime in South Africa, has proved expert in the use of apartheid walls, of fortified settlements, of Jewish-only roads, checkpoints and passbooks, as well as the more traditional forms of oppression, the police, the army, the air force, the defense force, if you will. All of these means it is used to divide the remaining Palestinian nation, which, let's not forget, is just 22% of historic Palestine, into a series of around 170 Bantustans, barely able to engage in social and economic intercourse with each other. It's no exaggeration to talk of an entire nation imprisoned. Israel is no less willing than apartheid South Africa to torture, kill and maim innocent men, women and children, all in the name of human rights and fighting terrorism. How hollow those phrases have come to sound on their lips. Israel is no less willing to expel them from their homes, to deprive them of natural resources, as Marx so beautifully illustrated for us. To exclude them from the best land and the economic fruits of their labour, solely on the basis of their race. Israel is certainly no less willing to trample on the rights of its neighbouring states, Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, Egypt, Iraq, Iran, Lebanon again, to invade and bombard them, all under the protective wing and with massive subsidy from US and UK imperialism. The US subsidizes them to $3.2 billion every year. Okay, $3.2 billion, and yet they claim not to be able to intervene. There's nothing we can do. We all know damn well that with a single phone call, should they make it, should they actually have the will, they could absolutely prevent the massacre. They could absolutely reopen the borders. Israel remains politically dependent upon the US. The tail does not wag the dog. Israel precisely is what the US wants in the army, which is a bellicose army directed at the hearts of the Arab nationalists in order to control their oil wealth in the last analysis.